Good. Good morning, members of council and staff and members of the public. Thank you for joining us for Committee of the Whole, May 2nd, 2023. We will start with the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. We would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today in Kespoutwik, one of the 7 districts of the Mi'kma'ki homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the treaties of peace and friendship, and we thank the Mi'kmaq people for their generosity in sharing their homeland with us. We are all treaty people.
Thank you. And just before I call for approval of the agenda, there are a couple of changes on the agenda. The presentation from Brianna Sangster, physician community navigator update. I understand that's been postponed until June, so that presentation won't be happening. And we don't normally do proclamations at Committee of the Whole, but we do have one today because the date will happen before council meeting. So those are 2 things that will be added, and also some comments from the deputy mayor regarding a longtime business person who is retiring. So we will add those to the agenda. And with those changes, Deputy Mayor, could you move the agenda?
I would like to move that the agenda be approved as circulated and or amended.
You and Councillor Butler. Are there any other changes, amendments, additions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are passed. And Committee of the Whole minutes of April 4th, 2023.
I would move that the minutes of April 4th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved as circulated.
You and seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, are there any errors or amendments to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes of Committee of the Whole April 4th, 2023, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That's passed. And Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes, April 4th, 2023.
I would move that the minutes in 2 parts of the Committee of the Whole in-camera meeting be approved as circulated.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Second. Councillor Ingham, thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are passed. And now I'll pass over to Councillor Ingham for the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. I would like to read the proclamation for Nova Scotia Walk Day. That is on May the 11th, 2023. That's next Wednesday. The town of Wolfville do hereby proclaim May the 11th, 2023 to be Nova Scotia Walk Day in the town of Wolfville. And I encourage all citizens to connect with their fellow community members and enjoy a friendly group walk. So that being said, we are doing a friendly group walk on, I thought it was May the 10th. I'm pretty sure it's May the 10th.
It's the Wednesday.
So Wednesday. So is that to the 10th? Did I get it wrong or no? So we are doing the walk on the 10th. Though.
We are.
Okay. So on the 10th of May at 10 o'clock, we are going to be doing a walk council, and anybody, we invite every single person in the town surrounding anybody to come out and enjoy a nice leisurely walk on the Harvest Moon Trail. We're going to be meeting at the library, 10 o'clock. All ages, abilities are welcome, dogs are welcome. And it's just a really nice way to get everybody out and enjoy the weather and some nice friendly conversation. Just on top of that, I just want to encourage people to also come out to the town of Wolfville puts on a walk on every Tuesdays at 10 o'clock, leaving from the library. So it's easy to remember. So if you want to continue on that tradition to just come out and meet community members, that would be great. So I encourage everybody to come out and that's it. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ingham. And Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. I just wanted to take a minute to recognize the fact that in about 2 weeks or so, Wolfville will be losing a landmark business. Rita's House of Fashion will be closing. I'm sure most of you are aware of that. And it's a place I know I've benefited from the last 30 odd years that I've been living in Wolfville. And I just wanted to say thank you to Rita Edwards for almost 4 decades of uninterrupted service to our community. It's a long time, to be running a business like that. It's proven to be, I guess, a very successful business. So I want to congratulate Rita on her business. And it has been a destination for Wolfville. Having worked up and down the valley, I've met many people from Halifax to Digby to the South Shore who would deliberately come to Wolfville to shop at Rita's and then stay and have lunch and do other things. So it's proven to be a valuable business asset to our community now for almost 40 years, 1985, I believe. So I just wanted to thank Rita for her dedication, her hard work, her contribution to our community, and to wish her all the best. I know she has a few plans related to horses and things, which I'm sure she will really benefit or enjoy. And yeah, I just wanted to recognize Rita in
you.
this thing.
Thank you on behalf of council to Rita for her longtime business service to the community, and we wish her very well. Thank you. Now, because we don't have presentation, public input, and I wonder if we have anybody in the audience who wishes to come up for public input. I remind you that each person has 3 minutes. We set aside 30 minutes, so if there aren't many people, we will let you speak for an extra minute. Questions are to be directed to the chair. This is not, however, a question and answer, and typically if there are questions, we'll pass those to staff to get back to you. So can I ask if we have anybody? I don't believe we have anyone online. Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to come up for public input? Do we have anybody online? No? Thank you. All right, so that moves us to committee reports internal. I will just go, oh yes, we have a new member in our council. That should make it much more pleasant during the hot and the cold days, mostly the hot days. We have a new air exchanger. Welcome to the council chamber.
I was looking.
No. All right, so I will just ask the counselor responsible for for each of these committees if there is anything they would like to add to their committee report, and then I will ask members of council if they have any questions. So Councillor Ingham, is there anything to add to your report?
No.
Accessibility Committee, members of council, are there any questions of Councillor Ingham? And Councillor Butler, anything to add to your report on audit?
As submitted.
And are there any questions of Councillor Butler? And Deputy Mayor Deirdre Voss, Planning Advisory Committee, anything to add?
No, just as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you. And any questions? Thank you. I guess we should remind people that there are 2 open houses related to PAC at noon and at 6 at the market. I'm sure we will 12 to 2 and 6 to 8. No, 12 to 2 and 6 to 8. And there are 2 of them. And I'm sure we'll probably hear a little bit more about that lately. No other questions of the deputy mayor? And also the deputy mayor, I see this says report to follow RCMP advisory.
Yes, we will.
Did you have a verbal report?
We had a very short meeting in our last meeting, and Aaron kind of provided an update on the new policing contract that we're looking at for April of 2024. And we also decided to ask the RCMP to provide a more detailed report that focuses specifically on Wolfville. They have 2 formats that they use. The one that's been used recently provides much broader statistics for the whole area, which is very, very interesting. It's also very interesting to see how Wolfville fits within those broader statistics, but we've asked that they provide a slightly different format that will provide more Wolfville specific information. So those are the 2 main items on the agenda.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputy mayor? No. And Policing Services Review Committee, that was chaired by our acting CAO. Are there any questions of either our CAO or the acting CAO on that report? Hearing none. I am just going to pass because your computer's still not up. I'm gonna,
My computer decided to start updating right before. So, but I'm getting it done, David. So. You have the CAO report in front of you, and thanks to Mike McLean, who acted for the last 2 weeks on my behalf while I was gone. So really appreciate that. I think it's pretty straightforward, but there was just a couple of compliance things that I actually wanted to take the opportunity just to highlight and maybe get Kaden to come up. The first is that we will be welcoming our new part-time compliance officer next Monday. Maren Schmidt is her name, and Kaden may want to come up and tell you a little bit about her, but you'll be meeting her shortly, and we're really excited to welcome her to our team. The second is we've been getting quite a few calls about the cleanup, especially in some areas of town where some materials have been put out sort of after the cutoff and still remain. So I thought it'd be good to have Kaden just come up and chat with you a little bit about the approach. This happens sort of year after year. He's done a little bit of work to look at some options, and I just felt that since we had a meeting today and it was very timely, he would come up and share where we're at.
Good morning, thank you. So yeah, it's that time of year again, so I know we all get pretty busy with calls. I know I do for sure. But so I taken a look around yesterday. There's about 33 and counting property that are quite heavily have some garbage by curbside that weren't there before. So I talked to a few people in particular, and yesterday one running into a pattern where people, they recognize when it is, but it seems they disregard it and just continue to put it out late or after the fact and expect cleanup to happen anyway, which is becoming a little bit of an issue. So I've reached out with Valley Waste and Dale, and we're going to try and coordinate to tackle these without maybe having to do that extra cleanup and pay the money for that. The plan would be to address the property owners, the occupants, whoever is responsible for putting that item out there. We know that, of course, it's student move out weekend. So if items are placed and the students already left, it would be the property owner's responsibility to either have those items disposed of properly or take them to the dump, whatever the case may be. But they certainly can't stay on the road just because yesterday I've witnessed a few things of stuff blowing around. It was pretty windy and rainy yesterday, and stuff pretty much hit the work car and a few other cars. So it's close because weather. So I forwarded Erin an email. I know she may have passed it along, but I just wanted to outline a few things because I always get the question is why can't we move it? It's simple, just move 1 week. So I just touched on those a little bit, and I got a few answers from Valley Waste that seem to still be relevant. So the 5 biggest things are the efficiency. So they have about 4 to 5 weeks to complete over 32,000 properties, which is a lot for them. The contractor equipment availability, they got to source them from municipalities, coordinate all that together. Special events like Apple Blossom, Acadia Convocation in the spring, and then it's different for the winter, but Halloween and stuff like that. Acadia, Kings Tech, and Middleton move out weeks, so they try and be fair to everyone and try and get as close as they can. But of course, they can't land bang on for everyone. And then the winter weather, but that's more so for the winter. So like I said, that leaves about a 4 to 5 week window to cover a large area. So last year, and I checked with him, he hasn't got back to me yet, but last year he gave me the option either last week of April of what it is currently now, or the second week of May. So people ask why we can't move it 1 week. And he says that now, I don't know if it's a new rule or what, but they don't like to do spring collection or fall the same week as regular collection because it causes a safety concern with green bins, too much bagged garbage. So they like to have that separately. So I don't know looking forward to next calendar year and stuff like that, but if our regular collection falls on the same week, it can't be that week. So it either has to be the week before or the week after. So the week before is what it currently is now, which I guess we're having issues because it's just before move out. If we move 2 weeks ahead, that's really close to convocation. So it's an option, but then we run into move out is the last week of April. That stuff will be sitting there for 2 weeks. And then if it gets cleaned up on time just before convocation, great. If it doesn't, I know convocation's that weekend, the 14th. So this tentatively would be the week of the 10th and end on that Friday. So then we have people coming into town for convocation, and that's what we're trying to avoid, is having these large items roadside when not everyone's coming to Wolf Bowl to celebrate. So those are the two options I have at the moment from last year. I asked if they're still accurate. And then moving forward, I'm just looking for a little guidance or input from council to see what we would like to do. If we would like to pay the money to do a cleanup, or myself and Dale with Valley Waste to go and chat with the property owners. There's already a few who aren't happy, which we expect, but people know from my experience when speaking with them, they know when the week is. And if they just decide not to follow that and decide to put it out on their own, they can't expect it to get picked up. So it's a tough spot, but that's the two options that I was given last year, and it still remains the same as far as I know right now. I'm still waiting to hear back from Andrew, but yeah, just looking.
You're looking for input right now? Is that what,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's good. I wasn't,
Yeah,
Sure.
it's just, there's a lot going on out in, especially Gasp Road is pretty busy. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I want to address it as soon as possible. Of course, convocation's coming up quick, and it's just a safety hazard.
Sure. Council thoughts?
I would suggest that at least for this year, we have to get it cleaned up. I mean, there will be an extra expense, but I think we need to do that as soon as possible. I mean, I see this outside my door all the time, but you know, I know that the leases are up, some are moving houses from one place to another. There are all sorts of reasons why this is happening. I'm just wondering if we do run into that conflict with the ideal week being the same as the garbage pickup, whether for that week we could switch the garbage pickup. I don't know if that's feasible or not, considering we'd have to let a lot of people know. But maybe that's the issue that we have to address, because I really think if leases end the last day of April, they're not really going to get rid of their stuff before that, because they have to, many of them have to stay there and sleep there. So.
Councillor Palmer?
I think we gotta get it cleaned up for sure. I would address the landlord association that loosely associated anyway. There's a bunch of them, then ask them what they want to do, because there's next year, if it's not going to be till the 12th, and it's going to be sitting around for 10 days, then that's going to be a mess. So I wouldn't be scared to address that association. I know it's pretty loose association, but there's certainly recommend, that's quite a few with landlords.
Councillor Butler?
I do agree that it would be nice to get it all cleaned up. I don't think it has to be at our expense. This is why tenants pay a damage deposit. So if they want to leave their stuff out after the fact, they don't get their damage deposit back. It can be easily communicated when cleanup week is, so that they know when things need to go out and what to do. Moving it forward, it is, I think, stipulated, I may be wrong, but it is stipulated that you're only allowed to put stuff out up to so many days before collection. So I think it's not 10 days. I think it is only maybe 6-7 days. I was very excited that I returned home from vacation and I had a bunch of stuff to put out, and my landlord told me that I had until Friday morning, and it actually was Thursday morning. I still have all my stuff. I'm not going to put it out by the side of the road and hope the town cleans it up. It'll sit in my storage until the fall. And I'm assuming this is not an issue with the fall cleanup. It's just the spring.
It's more so spring
Okay.
that
I'd be fine with it moving forward, but again, it is communication that you're only allowed so many days of putting stuff out, that it's not going to sit there for 10 days in the rain and all that stuff. And there are multiple ways of getting rid of stuff besides putting it to the curb. If it was good, they could sell it. They have plenty of time to be able to shift things. I don't think it should be the cost of the town to get rid of stuff.
Councillor McKay?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. It should be cleaned up too. It is a safety hazard for sure. So every year though, won't it all fall differently? So every year we could look at it and say, what day does it fall? And when is our normal garbage pickup? Because then we can arrange the two things. And if we gave everyone lots of advance, so if we know now for next year, we could communicate that and say, I think garbage pickup isn't such a big deal. It's the green bins that cause angst between the people because they get quite full. I don't find it as full, but so if you miss a week of that, that becomes a problem. So I just wonder, working with them every year, can we just find a way to try and make it a little more seamless
Yeah.
than what it is now?
Counselor Elliott?
Thank you. It's obviously a really complex equation. I was amazed this year. I think maybe it was the lack of rain, but everything on my street that got put out for the actual pickup, somebody took it. Like, we put out a broken flower pot. Somebody took it. It's just, I was amazed. And it was obvious everywhere when the pickup was. So I agree with you that the landlord should address it as a damage deposit kind of a thing, because there was no doubt about when it was happening. So, yeah. Gotta do it.
Sorry.
I mean, I agree with everything everybody said. We obviously need to clean it up right now, but I think that the way students, when they're moving out, they're just gonna, when they're getting ready to pack, they're just gonna put it out beside the road regardless. So whatever we decide to do, there has to be really strong messaging on there. And I agree with the communication with the landlords, but I can just see when my kids were packing up, it was, even if they finished on, most of them, a lot of students, don't stay maybe till the very end. A lot of them do, but some of them are just packing up and putting it out as they go, right? So I think regardless, if we change dates, you're still going to have some messaging that gets confused. So
It sounds like we need to get it cleaned up clearly this year. I agree with those who have said, and there is I think the landlords group is becoming a little more formal. I understand that they did have a meeting in the last week or so, and I'm going to follow up with them on that. I don't know why this isn't something that the landlords, we know who the landlords are. We can certainly send them an email, a letter in February or March and say, don't forget this is happening. And I don't know if this is something that we have to embed in policy, but if it's not picked up by, if it's left out after the pickup date, then you will be on the hook for this cost. I think that may be policy that we have to look at, but let's get it cleaned up for this year. I think there is a problem because we are in such a large areas. It's not that easy for us. It's easy for us to have our garbage picked up, but then there would be a trickle down, then Port Williams would have to wait, and then so it becomes a little more problematic. That said, this week seemed to be the pickup week for Port Williams, and I don't understand really under the circumstances why that couldn't have been flipped. I don't know that it's such a huge problem. We have garbage day on one day, and they're picking up that waste for the full week. So I think we get it cleaned up. I do think we need to have some more discussions with the GM of Valley Waste to impress upon him that, this is not brain surgery. I think we can find a way to manage it better than it is. But thank you, Caden, and thank you I know that you've been the front person on dealing with landlords and some angry people, and we appreciate
No
that you
problem.
did that on our behalf.
Anytime. Thank you.
So if you have any questions about the CA report, those were the main things to highlight.
Councillor McKay?
I just wanted to give our CAO a big shout out for running the Boston Marathon and doing it in such a quick time. Congratulations.
Just bear with me a minute. I have to check to see if I did have any questions. You might want to highlight that the road closure work at the south of Highland that I see in the report, May 3rd. No doubt we'll get a call or two about that.
Yeah, and we will be promoting that on
Good.
social media and our
Excellent.
channels.
And really happy to see that Wolfville Day is coming back. I have a puppy now. Are there any other questions of the CAO? Thank you. Thank you. And yes, congratulations, Aaron. You made us proud. All right, that brings us to civic addressing bylaw, and I think that's Caden again, right? Caden and Trevor, come on down. No, we don't.
I know. My discussion is not as charged as the garbage issue, so it's gonna be fairly quick. A lot of people are aware of civic addressing. Obviously, you have homes here and numbers are posted, but I'm going to essentially go through no presentation, just the discussion in RFD 019 civic address bylaw. So just some background. This is a collaboration between myself as the civic address coordinator, Caden as the bylaw officer, and James Cullicutt as the inspection services. So this discussion on a civic address bylaw started about a year ago. It's a lot of things on our plate, so we slowly got to it. But with the ramp up of fire inspection, one of the tools that they use is, and part of their inspection is the civic address signed properly on the property. So in discussions, we looked at building a civic address bylaw draft for you. Actually, civic addressing is pretty world renowned in Nova Scotia, as in the early 90s, you guys may know, late 90s, I guess. There's a lot of civic number changes happening throughout the province. So we took essentially, I think it was close to 50 911 emergency services and combined them into one for the province. So that's considered the 911 mapping system now as a reference. And that's essentially one common place where civic addresses are registered digitally throughout the province. So CACs are generally technicians like myself, but the smaller units that maybe don't have a technician, it's actually sometimes the CEO does it. So there's a variety of different people that are in charge of it. So I'm just here to say that civic address numbering is good in Wolfville. What we're using the civic address bylaw is to support inspection services. And I'm happy to say that Caden's going to help us out with the enforcement of it if there's any orders to comply. So he seems to be doing a pretty good job with that. So I will be using his services if need be. Just a background on, we did do a little bit of field work just to see what the state of civic numbering is. We're looking just basically to, a lot of the times in this bylaw is to make sure people have their signs properly posted. There's a lot of that, over time numbers wear out or they get weathered, and people need a reminder to have that address fixed up. So in our discussion, what we're really looking at doing is initiating this bylaw. There's several pieces of it that are very similar. We took this bylaw from examples of town of Yarmouth and Truro. So we kind of slimmed it down a little bit just because of resource time, but we will manage the common or general requirements for a civic address bylaw. So I'm just going to, a few highlights of the draft. Again, we're trying to target so let me get to the just some general requirements for civic addressing. Again, the number, the height of the signage, the color. So we're looking at contrasting. So the numbers contrast to something, whether it's the building or a plate. We don't necessarily require the blue reflective sign, but we would like a resident to have that contrasting. Minimum number standards. So the number on the building is 4 inches up to 8 inches, depending on the distance from the street. So everything is essentially what we look at as street based visual from the street. So those are just general signage. We don't really have a whole lot of like renumbering issues in the town. There's a few in town that we're going to use the bylaw to help out with that. Again, so as a permit comes in for a new development, we can, with the bylaw, we can actually give them documentation. They can see what they need is required to put their address up. And then in inspection services, we can actually make sure that that number is put up. So kind of as a CAC, these guys are kind of help me do my job. So it's really, really nice in that regard. So, and then like on final inspection, we'll make sure that signage is there. You have anything?
That's pretty good.
It's an exciting part of my job.
All of your job is exciting.
Yeah, you have any questions?
Any questions? We do have a motion, but Councillor Palmer.
So you see the number being part of the occupancy permit? Is that what you envision?
Generally, yeah. So civic address is assigned at footprint. So when a surveyor comes in and assigns, does the footprint, and we get the footprint back as part of our permit process, that I know essentially where the driveway is. And then we know that the process of the building is started, and then we assign the address. And another note in that is, if you ever recalled Service Nova Scotia, they actually use the 911 mapping system as a verification of your address. So a lot of the services outside of what we do help with that.
Other questions? We do have a motion, Councillor Elliott.
Can I make the motion and make a comment at the same time?
Or make your comment first. I'm sorry. I thought,
Okay.
go ahead, do your
Okay,
comment.
I just was remembering the early 90s and thinking, is this deja vu before I read the report? Because I'm thinking,
No, we're not going to do that to
Greg
you.
Morrison took care of this quite a while ago. And then I realized that it's just a really good updating of what we had and looking to the future. So I thank you for that. And I would like to move that council, the committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision and give first reading to the civic addressing bylaw RFD 019-2023.
Thank you. And Councillor Palmer.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded. Your light was on. I assume that's what you were going to do, but no, I just thought you were going to second it. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you so much. And thank you, Trevor and Caden. Community Safety Officer Office proposal, and I am assuming that that is a CAO.
Barb actually is going to
Actually,
come up
Barb,
and do
sorry.
the, yeah. She's going to walk through the presentation I've made at the review committee.
Good morning, members of council, through the mayor to the audience and to staff as well as council. I want to walk you through where we're at with a proposal that has come before the Policing Services Review Committee and now it's before you today for consideration. So the proposal focuses on the potential creation of a community safety office for the town of Wolfville. So with the work that the Policing Services Review Committee has been doing for well over a year now, we did some pretty extensive engagement, and it has been very clear through that process. And as members of council are aware, because you hear about it often, there are gaps in service that we continuously are hearing about with our current service provider. There seem to be limitations with what the RCMP are providing within our community. And these gaps seem to really focus on nuisance issues or issues of disorder. Community safety offices have shown great success in filling these gaps in communities across the country. And so that's where the notion of this proposal started from. At the same time, we have been through the Policing Services Review Committee. We've been kind of being responsive to the very sudden change in our contract that council was able to deal with. We have also been waiting for the delivery of the mass casualty final report, which I'll be referencing shortly. And we've also been looking to just be as creative as possible within the town through our compliance department to ensure that we really have a good sense of, what is the way that we can finally tackle these issues and really identify the concerns and meet the needs of our community members. So the Mass Casualty Commission final report, Turning the Tide Together, it's laid out in multiple volumes. It is a very difficult read emotionally. It is not a difficult read from a content perspective, and I encourage people to start picking their way through it. It's like the TRC. It's one of those really important documents that we should all be familiar with. So as Dr. Schneider brought forward his proposal to kind of really examine how a community safety office would look for the town of Wolfville, I thought it was important to make the connection to the mass casualty report. Throughout, there are references to the need for a different approach when it comes to basically co-producing safety in our communities. And community safety offices are one way to do that. So just to cover a little bit of background, specifically from volume 5, which has to do with policing and Turn the Tide Together. Common themes throughout the report kind of note that the RCMP are continuously being encouraged to act on some very key pieces that came up throughout the report. These are similar themes to what we have heard during our engagement process. These themes that seem to be problematic, no matter where the service is being delivered, these are around issues of trust within a community, how priorities are set, how local needs are met, as well as a lack of local decision-making. So again, these are not just Wolfville issues, although we clearly have heard that here, but these have come up consistently, and the Mass Casualty Commission has identified those as being areas that need improvement. On page 40 of volume 5, on page 420 of volume 5, disorder was described as being problematic. And so it's defined here as, the basic mission of the police is to improve public safety and well-being by promoting measures to prevent crime, harm, and disorder. And again, when we talk about nuisance issues in the town of Wolfville, disorder is a major problem. And, having just gone through Cheaton Cup and what happened on the streets then, disorder continues to be a theme we're dealing with. So as a contract partner with the RCMP, we struggle with kind of who sets the priorities. So volume 5, page 458, they really kind of had an interesting examination of contract policing and detachments in particular. So we speak of detachments, and I really appreciated this real definition. So detachments basically mean a detached unit of a large centralized police bureaucracy. So local RCMP detachments are fiscally and politically independent of the local community and respond primarily to the centrally derived policies, enforcement priorities, and production pressures of the organization, and not necessarily the local community. So again, from this massive amount of reporting across the country, people are having difficulty filling that gap and meeting the needs of local community members. Again, in Wolfville, disorder is one of those needs that we need to have met. Of interest, page 462 of volume 5, the Brown report came out in 2007. It made recommendations that these issues should be dealt with. They were not dealt with. So we have another recommendation, recommendation 46, that the recommendations of the Brown report made many years ago should be actioned. So all of this is to just remind folks that these needs are ongoing. We're trying to be creative. We've had some wonderful opportunities to pilot different things. Dr. Stephen Schneider, who is very well known to, I think, most members of council, he has been working with our CAO to kind of talk about what he could offer as far as support. And so we're looking in the shorter term of potentially having him work through the development of a proposal that would outline what a community safety office would look like specifically for our community. And that would include resourcing and staffing. So this went, as I noted, to the Policing Services Review Committee. So in their kind of discussion of this, and it was a great discussion that I was really excited to hear. So some of the recommendations from that committee that are part of what's coming forward in your report today. There is a desire that any future direction that the town is taking with policing needs to be referenced in whatever the final work is that Dr. Schneider will prepare. The plan that he will be developing needs to fully consider the integration of Acadia Safety and Security, as well as our town compliance department. And that also we need to ensure that all of this is really done cooperatively with Acadia, and also that we might want to look to Acadia to support through funding. The other piece that I was able to add in the updated RFP that's before you is also a link. There's a hot link in your report that will take you to the work that Halifax has gone through. So HRM has also been doing a lot of work on this subject. They're having similar issues to what we experience here in Wolfville. And I did provide the link to their final report that went to HRM Council a week or so ago. It's really comprehensive. It's well done. I think if you take some time to review it, you will find some great similarities and probably feel some empathy towards their experiences as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions for you at this time, but that is before you now.
Right. Are there any questions of Barb? If not, Jody, I'm going to Councillor McKay. Sorry, I was going to ask you to put the motion as a member of the Police Services Committee on the floor, and then I'll ask again if there are any questions.
Great, thank you, Marilyn. I have one question. We had discussed changing the name at the committee from safety to wellness, because it encompassed a few other, happiness doesn't fall particularly under safety, but it does under wellness. So I wonder what if there would be, can I move it with a change in name and see how it goes? Or would we like to discuss the phrasing of that? And is that problematic, CEO?
I think that as part of the work that Dr. Schneider does as he goes forward might be the branding and naming of it. So taking those comments in mind and doing some consultation, I think we should just make it very clear that the name as we now have it probably isn't going to resonate, and have that as part of the scope of the work as opposed to trying to name it now before that work is done.
Okay.
And just to note, there was an amended motion that came after this proposal, and I just want to make sure that the correct one is in. Mike just sent me a text to just note that. So I just don't want any confusion with having that on the screen. I think if you read off your motions list, you'll be fine.
Perfect, thank you. I would move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve the proposal submitted by Dr. Stephen Schneider to explore the creation of a community safety office, CSO pilot project for the town of Wolfville.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. And Deputy Mayor seconded. Councillor Palmer, do you have?
All right, well, first of all, you reference a Brown report. Is that the Moncton report?
I believe it
Yeah, I
is.
think it is
Yeah.
too. The, you're referencing at the end, getting Acadia on side. Without Acadia on side, I think we're banging our head against the wall. Are they on side? Do we know? Have we get any feedback?
I've had a follow-up discussion with a representative from Acadia that's part of this process, and the indications are that they are moving forward to be a partner on this project, because we don't disagree. They need to be part of this for it to be successful.
Councillor Ingham.
I guess it's just a comment. So initially when I read this, I am thinking of my role as being fiscally responsible. And I was like, why do we need to have a proposal for a pilot project? And so I read it, and after Barb, you explained it, I think it is now important that we have something specific for Wolfville. So initially, I saw the amount and I'm like, we've done other pilot projects and we haven't had proposals on them. And then that also would have to come to council for us to decide if we wanted to move forward. So I guess the way I'm thinking is that it is important to have it specific to Wolfville. We can look to other areas and some of the other areas that already have them. But because we have Acadia here and we need to work together, and I do have the same concerns as Ian. how does this look? And Dr. Snyder may answer a lot of these questions. How does it look that we all work together, compliance, RCMP and Acadia? That's going to be interesting to me. And so hopefully those answers will be, resolved on that. So.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I did police reports for 15 years and I saw the change in Wolfville from having a sergeant on hand and being active in the community to the district model that we're under now. And it's almost night and day. I was really optimistic when Staff Sergeant Ed Nugent came in and said that he saw the value in having somebody with authority in the local detachment. But I think that going with what a professional criminologist recommends, his advice is experienced and valuable also because he lives in the community. So he knows what he's going to be recommending, whether it'll work or not work. And I think that's really valuable information. The fact that the CAO is willing to resource this project through her budget speaks to the importance of it as well. So I think this is just the next step we have to take.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. I just want to concur with the comments that have been made before me. I think this is a very important next step. I think we have been, trying to address some difficult issues. And to some extent, we've been doing it in a piecemeal fashion. We create the office, our own staff that is trying to deal with these issues. We try to communicate and work in partnership with Acadia. We have an RCMP committee that we communicate regularly with, but we don't have really control over the 8 priorities. We control 1, although hopefully that will change. And then we also have been trying to respond to residents requesting video cameras to help in that process. So we've been looking at a number of ways that we can either have people helping us address or create new tools that can help us address this. But I think the potential for this project is to give us a comprehensive view and one that is unique to our town, because we do have policing or safety or wellness challenges that are different from New Minas or Kentville. I mean, having a university in town is unique. And so and all the visitors that come in addition to that, because I do want to stress, when I see some of the issues that we're dealing with, at least in my neighborhood, I would say the majority do not apply to those who live in my neighborhood. They apply to people who are coming to share in the experience. And so I think this is a very important next step, because it does provide us with a perspective that is, somebody who has an expertise in this, but it can also create a more comprehensive structure and approach for us to move forward with. So I think this is, anyway, I'm in support of this next move.
Councillor McKay.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur. I think this is absolutely essential for us. And I think it's the timing is right. As our CAO is negotiating the new agreement with the RCMP and figuring out what this would look like and how those things will tie together in conjunction with Acadia. And we're now just putting that new MOU into place and putting an action plan and finding things that will synergize us together. This could be a really neat one to start with. So I think the timing is just happenstance is what I'm looking for, with the word coincidence. Yeah, it was a great discussion at the committee level. And putting the sports going to be, I think, a really positive thing for our community.
All right. Yes, I would. The only comment that I would make, it was very heartening at police review that it was actually the Acadia rep who initiated that Acadia needed to be part of that. So it was that's the first time that that has been initiated in that way. So that was very heartening. So if there are no other comments or questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And thank you, Barb, for your presentation. That was very helpful to our understanding. That brings us to the temporary borrowing resolution. Director McLean.
We're losing the crowd as soon as we got to finance.
Don't take it personally. There's other good ones coming up after, you know.
You've had a chance to look at the report. I won't go into detail because it is annual, what I always refer to as housekeeping. We have to get the proper documentation in place for what will ultimately be long-term borrowings for capital projects. So the documents you have in front of you reference both the dollar amount and that ultimately next year will go to a long-term borrowing, assuming projects are completed. One of the differences this year, and it's similar to the year we did the sewer treatment plant expansion, was the short-term, the temporary borrowing resolution is a larger dollar amount than we will ultimately be looking to next spring, and that's to cover our cash flow while we wait to get grant funding, be it for AT, for the sewer treatment plant, whatever it may happen to be. So it'll bridge us through that period of time. I don't expect that we'll need the full amount, but we do it at that dollar amount to ensure cash flow. And if there were any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Councillor Butler, maybe you'd put the motion on the floor and then we'll ask for questions.
I move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. That council approve the attached temporary borrowing resolutions. TBR 2324-01 various purposes town, $2,552,900. TBR 2324-02 water transmission and distribution, $399,900. Total borrowing, $2,952,800 to cover loan facilities with the Bank of to cover loan facilities with the Bank of Montreal until such time as the short-term loans are replaced with debenture borrowings and grant funding as per the 2023-2024 town capital budget, 10-year investment plan, CIP, and 2023-24 water utility capital budget.
Thank you. And seconder, please. Councillor McKay. So eager. Are there any questions for Director McLean? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's passed. And oh, Jenny. Okay, welcome. Whenever you're ready, Jenny.
All right. Hi, everyone. So we're looking at writing off some of the water sewer receivables. So it was 9 years ago when it was the last time that we've done this. And majority of it was cleaning up of water deposits. So if you're a tenant, you're required to pay a $75 refundable water deposit. And it took a couple years ago, we reconciled the sub ledger to the general ledger. And so there's a lot of housekeeping that we just wanted to have done. So we're asking to write off $4,000 to bad debts. And that was like the last 9 years, which is average like $100 to $1,400 per year. And we average around $1.3 million in revenue. So it's very minimal what we're asking to write off. And some of those write-offs have gone to a collection agency, so we still may collect some of them. And so, yeah, majority of it is our water deposits that we're looking to write off to other revenue. So if a tenant does come in, we can always reimburse them. It'll still be on their history. So anyone has any questions?
Councillor Butler. Yes, I know.
Okay.
Anna.
Me again. I move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. The council approves the attached list of water sewer receivable accounts totaling a net credit of $12,916.10 for write-off representing $17,025.47 as other income and $4,109.37 as bad debt expense.
Thank you. And a seconder, please, Councillor Ingham. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Palmer.
Well, it's not really a question. I just like to recommend staff or recognize staff for doing a good job of collecting that
Yeah.
over 9
Yeah.
years. I mean, that's pretty minimal. Thank you.
Counselor Ian, do you
I
have
was
a
just going to say the exact same thing. That is a small amount for 9 years, so good job on that.
There are no other questions. All those in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. Thanks, Jenny. And that brings us to Gasbro Avenue, Devon, Rector Lake.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think I'll be pretty brief on these, just I anticipate doing quite a bit of talking today. Yeah. Is this the agenda? Yeah. Me? I'm gonna do it. We're fighting. Okay. Oh, okay. Just bear with me here. Down we go. And finance folks have a lot of things. Okay. All right, so I just want to acknowledge Mr. Mills, who's here as the applicant on this, and this has taken a number of months to bring forward to Committee of the Whole, just working through issues. So when this came to Planning Committee, there was an additional building in the application. I'll just go to the drawing. So there was a building out here next to Gasbro Avenue, and just the conditions of the current market, construction realities. There's just been some, I think, sober thinking on the applicant's behalf to bring something forward and finish this project off. So what's here in front of you are two separate buildings, each of 10-unit townhomes. And the bulk of the work that we've been doing with the applicant in the meantime, if you are on PAC or saw this when it went through PAC, was mostly around pedestrian connectivity to what will be a four-way stop eventually. Getting people down to Pleasant and Skyway, essentially. So we've worked that out with the applicant, and there was a number of concerns just around landscaping and I would call it sort of finishing the site at the PAC level. And just, I think the construction realities of bringing heavy equipment in and, you know, really sort of beating up the site, so to speak. We've put something in the development agreement to ensure that is done in a timely manner. I don't think there's a whole lot else to say on this one, so I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, would you like to put this motion on and then we'll ask for questions?
Yes, I would move that the Committee of the Whole recommend that the development agreement amendments for 213-223 Gasbro Avenue, PID 55274591, be forwarded to a public hearing.
Right. And Councillor Elliott, is your light on because you'd like to? second
Indeed it is.
Right. All right, moved and seconded. Are there any questions of staff? Comments? Deputy Mayor? Your light's on.
Oh, sorry.
No, Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, just wondering, Devon, if the open section close to Gasbro, that the long-term plan is to have it open? Like not built on, or is it that just for now, given the market?
Yeah, I think there would be a possibility there in the future, depending on how things go. But so the right of way, the former Gasbro Avenue right of way, is being transferred over to the adjacent owners, both Mr. Mills and I can't remember your neighbor's name.
Cross? Ted?
Teddy.
Ted Cross?
Ted Cross, yeah. So that process is ongoing as well. So yeah, there would be an opportunity there in the future.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. Just a comment. Thank you to the developer and to Devin for keeping this going in a way that keeps, you know, housing being built. And yet not letting it be a barren land and that the land's being finished in a reasonable time as well. I think that's important to everyone who lives there. So thank you for that.
Councillor Ingham?
I also want to echo what Jody just said. But I do want to thank the developer for writing the letter. I think it provides a very clear issues of what's actually going on right now. And it did mean something to me when I read it. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I just want to thank, you for the work that you're doing and hope that you continue on. Yeah.
Okay, we're ready for the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. Good luck, Travis. All right, where are we now? Wolfville Children's Center. Welcome. Right. But you don't have to go. But he's enjoying this.
He's giving you the notes.
Oh, who knows?
Can I just say, I wish Kelly brought the children with her?
That might be boring for them. They can come to Wolfville Days, just another plug for that. Seriously. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So this item first came, and again, Kelly is here from the Children's Center. I just want to acknowledge her presence here as well. So they gave a great presentation to council a few months ago. And really what the ask is for support around expanding the center, whether that be a new build, and just the constraints that they're under. So their existing building has accessibility issues. They have really no area for expansion. And so the logical ask there, just to really cut to the chase, was to come to the town and talk to us about adjacent land. So I've tried to show all of the pieces on this map. There's a number of pieces here. So just starting in the top left, there is land leased from the EKM Foundation that is ostensibly the bulk of Quiet Park. The yellow area to the right of that, or to the east, is a town-owned area that is also a part of the green. So the green and the yellow are one parcel that the town does own, just to be clear. The green piece outlined is really what we're talking about today, is the opportunity to work with the Children's Center on using that land to construct a new center while still operating the existing center. And long-term, and this is why we're using the words land swap, is that our park space that is in that space currently would be moved out to the frontage on Earnscliffe, if that makes sense. And just to finish up the story, there is a small parcel and a very well-used east-west connection through town that we do own. You can see that it's sort of an awkward shaped pseudo rectangle, and it includes an easement out to Westwood. So that's important as well. And then there is shared parking with EKM, you can see in the yellow piece there. So all of this is to say, what we're really looking for at the staff level at this point is some direction from council on moving this forward into negotiation with the Children's Center, so we can get into some more detail. I think there's a number of questions and a number of pieces that I'm still looking to work through. So just to make that clear, I don't think this is really simple, just because, I mean, this map sort of illustrates that there's a lot going on in this small area. But yeah, that's the really quick overview of this. The other two pieces that we do outline in the report is that this land is zoned as park space. We do have a little bit of a narrative in here about the parks planning process that we're going through. Certainly from my seat, I think this type of process on the front end before we deliver a final parks master plan is helpful to define the different bounds that we're working in, the scope of work for Quiet Park. And the other piece is lost on me right now. So I think that's probably it.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, do you want to put the motion on the floor and then we'll open up to discussion? And I think the motion list doesn't say you need to say forward to council. And then read the motion, I noticed that these, so when you do the motion, just say forward.
The committee of the whole forward to council.
It's on the other page. Just wasn't on the last motion and I didn't read it.
Okay, you'll have to correct me if I say it wrong. Okay, I would move that the committee of the whole forward to council the following motion for decision.
Yep.
Have it. The council directs staff to enter into negotiations with the Wolfville Children's Center, the WCC, to enable a land swap of adjacent town-owned land to facilitate the WCC constructing a new facility and bring back a draft agreement for council direction and approval.
Councilor Butler,
I'll second that.
okay. You get brownie points for this? I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm just not very. Equity is not been good. All right, I will open this up. Councillor McKay.
Thank you. So just the pathway that walks across from Westwood to Burns Cliff,
Burns
that
Cliff.
stays, correct? Just want to make sure. So totally in favor of doing this land swap and doing it now before we do our parks plan. You spoke to some of the challenges. Clearly it needs to be rezoned, but what would be some of the challenges that would that you see happening, because there's a lot in this space?
16 Westwood, I think, is a very awkward shape that comes into the usable area. And just the only thing that we really have is a very early concept. So just taking that to a little bit more detail to ensure that this land can accommodate that. Parking locations, given that there is a fairly substantial parking lot there already, and facilitating public access to a future park space and coordinating how that park space could play out in the future, at least in the broad strokes, I think is important as we move forward. The yellow parcel that you see there, I do think because of the orientation of 16 Westwood, it does create a bit of an awkward piece of our park. So just all of these things playing into the parks master plan and enabling the Children's Center to move forward. Those are a few of the details. I think I was saying to Kelly this morning, just sitting down with EKM and making sure everyone's expectations are on the table, I think is also very important as we move this forward.
So nothing incredibly prohibitive, just
No.
some details to work through. Thank
Yep.
you. Okay.
Councillor Ingham.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor McKay. It does make sense, you know, for the Wolfville Children's Center. It is a top priority for us to make sure that there is more spaces available for children in this area for sure. I guess my question is what it was new to me when I read it. I wasn't, because I remember the proposal that the Wolfville Children's Center came in February, and that wasn't something that was discussed. So my question would be, with land swap, I always think of like, what's the difference in the land? How many acres does Wolfville Children's Center have, and how much do you know, like what's the difference in the size?
I don't have the exact number right here, but just visually you can see that they're very close. And that this is part of the detail that I think is important to bring back is when you look at the actual footprint of the playground space where the arrow is pointing to versus what might be envisioned in a future park space that's connected to Quiet Park with any other parking or other amenities. I think that's something we need to bring back and discuss in more detail, but it's generally fairly equal when you just look at it from this bird's eye view. It's pretty marginal, the difference. Yeah.
Good. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, well, that's sort of right along the same line. First of all, I'm fully in support of this. I think it's a great that these guys can move forward with anything. Do they really want to swap, or do we just want to end up with an agreement that they take both lands? Is that what would their? I mean, they're going to end up with playgrounds and stuff at the end of this. So are they going to have enough room on the new parcel of land? That would be a question that I had asked them. Like, do they really need it all as opposed to swapping it?
I don't have an answer, but I think that's a good question that we need to discuss. Yeah.
Other comments, questions? Couple of comments then. Because there is a plan in Quiet Park, a pseudo plan that includes a playground, I would think that the area of the current children's center, the playground was planned to go in the land behind, so there would need to be space for a playground. So open to the community. I like this, and I like it for a couple of reasons. I think in the development of Quiet Park and the focus on all of the older adults living around here, it provides more space very close to the retirement home and to the nursing home. So that's nice. The other thing, I don't know what the timing of this is, but I was saying to the CAO yesterday, if the children's center was rebuilt in the next, so what are you thinking, 5 or 6 years? Would be nice timing for when this building is raised and construction. And I've always wondered, where would town hall go? Like, what spaces would, so it's possible that in the short term, that might provide a space for town hall. I don't know if that's a possibility, but if the children's center was already in a new building, this town hall is going to need a space to go in for a little while. So it's something just to put a pin in. Don't know whether it would work, but it then provides because presumably that existing building would ultimately be also demolished. But anyways, it's something to think about. As I have said before, as I think we all did, those of us who were at your AGM, this is exciting project. I think it's we wish you all the best, and I'm sure that many of us will roll up our sleeves or do whatever to help with your fundraising. Only mention, and this is just kind of an ancillary comment, I did get an email from a resident who has some physical challenges, and I don't walk on that path, but he said to me the path needs to be repaved immediately. So I was going to bring it up at the next accessibility committee, but I just, since we are talking about it today, I'll pass that on to staff. As I say, I have not walked on it. Maybe some of you have, maybe Kelly, you have, I don't know. This is a person who uses that cut through regularly, and might be worth the accessibility committee members, at least some of us, taking a walk and seeing what is not great. So anyways, I just passed that on, but yeah, I think there's great potential here. No other comments or questions? I will call the question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That will go forward to the next phase. Closure of the compost site.
So I'll start speaking to this. You can see that it's from Public Works, Parks, Finance, and Planning all. And I wasn't here the last 2 weeks. So if there's any specific questions that you have, I can direct it to the appropriate person. But having said that, at the April COW meeting, there was a motion being brought forward to council to close the current Maple Avenue compost site effective June 3rd. And there was a lot of discussion around what would that look like after June 3rd in terms of service to residents. So we've come back with an interim solution for the summer. which is to put bins or shipping containers on the north side of our Public Works yard, so that on Saturdays, similar hours to what's current, residents can drop them off, and then we would take those to Valley Waste. We would provide that service from June until November, so that there wouldn't be an interruption. It would just be a little bit different for residents. They'd have to go to Public Works as opposed to Maple Avenue. And then you can see there's 3 longer term options that we'll be looking at, whether we have a whole new site somewhere, whether we continue with the transfer station type of option, or whether we not have a site and look at a different value add service with Valley Waste, but we're not there yet. So those are just some options that our staff are exploring, and we'll come back with more information. But for the summer, the Public Works yards and shipping containers is our plan. As noted, there's no costing information available yet on that. We think it's manageable within the budget that we have, but once we know that information, we'll bring it back so that you have it, and we're transparent about what the cost will be, but we don't expect it to be significant. Don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that.
I think the only thing we could add at this point, and any one of the management team, because we had a bit of a discussion last week and maybe the week before on it, was as you move into discussing the interim agreement and the motion that already had the compost site closing that first week of June, we just wanted to make sure council was aware that what was happening for the rest of the season wasn't just left on the side. So the reason it's an info report is just to highlight exactly what the CAO has gone through, and to allow that to then evolve as it's going to. And that frees up the conversation, at least from our perspective, in terms of the interim agreement. That is a different matter now. And you'll note we've started to take the word compost site out of some of it, because we're saying the Maple Avenue compost site and the compost site down at Public Works. So some of that phrasing has been changed just to separate the issues in their individual components. And I think that captures it. And I'll kind of look at Devin to see if I summarize that decently, but I think that was it.
I was just going to say that I assume everyone knows this, but this is information that's complementary to the motion that we brought forward and is kind of on the table for the special counsel and the next report as well. So this is kind of trying to fill in some of those gaps and answer the questions that came out of that discussion.
Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Palmer?
I just want to point out, that I live on Maple Avenue and I see what goes up there, that these are going to be containers, that there is a size requirement for the public, what they're allowed to take up there. I just want to remind the public that we're not going to take trees on the back of tractors up into this new facility, that they are going to go into containers and then go on the road. So let's just make sure the public is aware of what we're doing down there. It's not just a place to dump a tree.
That's a good point, and presumably our communications will provide that information. Councillor Elliott?
I have 2 questions that came from Maple Avenue resident just this morning regarding this site. She is concerned about whether efforts will be made to minimize the amount of tree removal on that site. Now, we know it's largely empty because of the function that it has, but when the roadworks go in, will the minimum amount of trees be implicated or removed? That was one question. And the second question is, given the amount of trails behind the compost site, will there be some kind of trail safety protocols set up during the construction as an interim measure? So those 2 questions.
I'm not sure this actually deals with the closure of the compost site. Are we going to deal with that during the interim? Yeah, so maybe, so Devin, I'm seeing you say you'll talk about it during the next report. That's good. Councillor McKay.
This might sound like a really silly question.
Never silly question.
But when you go to the compost site, you pull up with your, trailer and you just empty it, right? How do you get, because I'm thinking, I mean, I don't do the garbage in my house, let's be clear. So, but if I was to take it down there, how would I get it in the bin? Because in my head, I see me lifting
A tree.
a tree over my head and into a bin, which clearly, well, I mean, I'm strong, but maybe not that strong. I don't know how that works.
I'm gonna jump in for a second, maybe lean towards Kelton and or Alex. I think all of the logistics of how this is going to be set up is currently what's being worked on. So,
Okay.
I think the comment of the size of debris that we take, if I can use debris. There'll be some parameters around this in communication, and I see Kelton reaching for the mic, so here it goes.
The quick answer to the question about lifting up into a bin, the bins that we're talking about have doorways at the back, so they're walk-in bins. So if we could get you in there, you would stay there, but
I would stay there. Awesome.
yeah. The bins open at the back doors.
Okay, thank you.
Residents will need to respect that it won't be as quick as it is at Maple Ave, but the accommodations to make that unloading as easy as possible is part of the discussions.
Fantastic, thank you.
Let's get this motion on the floor.
There, sure.
I would move the committee of the whole for the following decision to council. The
There's
council,
no motion with this particular report.
sorry,
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but there was no motion.
Sorry. I was conferring with the CAO. Before we move to the next report, we are going to take a 10-minute break. So we're not adjourned. We're on break. We're on break. Back in 10 o'clock. Okay, okay, all right. Because
You're expecting long discussion.
Hello?
Didn't think it would. Rest in peace, Gordon.
Yes, he did
Yesterday.
Yeah,
What the
yesterday.
hell was going on yesterday? Randy, Brother,
Hello.
would you want to go somewhere and cry? I saw Gordy. I thought he was going to die like 20 years ago.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
All right, welcome back. And our technical issues have been addressed, have they? Are we live? We're live-ish. All right, then let's move to RFD 023-2023 interim agreement with developers of town land, Maple Avenue. And before Devin, you start, Erin, could you explain, just go over how we're going to approach this?
So this is a public facing report and there is a draft motion in front of you. We do have our solicitor joining. He's going to listen into this conversation if he can get online. And then he's joining for the in-camera because some of your questions may be contractual in nature and we thought it would be appropriate to have him here. So if you want to listen to the report, Devin's going to give the overview. We're going to finish the rest of the agenda. We're going to go in camera. Charles will be available. And then we'll come out of camera to make the motion. And any questions that you may have might be appropriate to leave them for the in-camera in case they do tread into the contractual nature and require his advice.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will have the report, no questions. We'll do that in camera, then we will come out. Take it away, Devin.
Okay, so this again, as I said earlier, is complementary to the compost discussion that we had a few weeks ago and the motion that's coming forward to special council after we get through this. So I just wanted to bring up the latest version of the overall master plan for the East End. So as you can see on your screen right now, just for the bigger context and to prepare everyone for their discussions from 12 to 2 and 6 to 8 at our open house today as well. But I'm just going to zoom in to this area that we're discussing. And I think the important thing about this interim agreement is the developer wants to move ahead with actually putting the road in, not in a piecemeal fashion. So they want to work on the entirety of the road. Given the fairly positive construction season that we have, with roads opening and things going, the interim agreement is really a bridge to move ahead with servicing agreement and sort of honoring the development rights that will be established in the secondary plan, anticipated to move forward very shortly. So I'll just go back. That's the big picture. So there's not a whole lot here. The agreement that we have drafted provides for a limited scope of work, mainly the culvert replacement. So there's a large culvert that runs under the entirety of the compost site. And the other works there is mostly about moving material around for the benefit of PAC and council that did the walking tour. You know that the grade is a challenge and there needs to be material moved around the site to accommodate that. So really this is just, and I think Councillor Palmer said it before, this is really to try to work with folks on using the construction season, the short construction season that we have in Nova Scotia to the best extent that we can. And yeah, I'll just leave it there.
That is your presentation.
I think so.
Okay. Just checking. As I've just been thinking here, as we have just mentioned, questions will go in camera there because there may be some things that touch on contractual. Not all questions may be contractual, so I'm going to I will take notes of questions, and I'm sure other people will. If there are things that are not contractual, questions counselors have and answers, I see no reason why when we come out of in camera that we can't, because there may be people. Councillor Elliott asked a couple of questions that came from a resident. There may be things that are not contractual that we would want to make public. So if we're okay with that, then we will, what we're going to do is get through this quick part external committee reports, and then we will go, hopefully we will have Charles and we will go in camera and then we'll come back out again. So that's our plan. Kings Point to Point, Councillor Butler, I don't know if you were there or.
Councillor Ingham was my
Councillor
alternate while I
Ingham.
was basking in the sun, and I thank her very much for going.
Is there anything, and are there any questions of Councillor Ingham on Kings Point to Point? I have a question. Because King's Transit is pursuing a review of their transit, their routes and so on. Do you know if Kings Point to Point has been read into the fact that that's about to happen?
It wasn't in the discussion that I was there.
It was in the previous
It
month.
was?
Yeah, they do keep in as close contact as they can,
Okay.
especially with things like the e-vehicle movement and all that kind of stuff. So they've gotten better at their communication. I
Okay.
think that was part of our February meeting.
report. Okay,
Yeah.
so, all right, thank you. Councillor McKay, are you Trails? Yes. Any questions? Councillor McKay? And Councillor McKay, WBDC?
Nothing to add. The AGM is gonna go forward on June the 13th. The location is still TBD, but.
Oh,
Well, I think,
I was told where to be, so.
okay, when I saw Kelly when we did the walk, she thought it was going to be that place, but I think she was getting the treasurer's approval for
Okay.
the spend.
Okay. Okay.
So
Won't
I'm
blurt-
sure it will be there.
I won't blurt it out
Oh.
then. Thank you. Diversity Kings, Councillor Ingham,
Nothing to.
your light.
Sorry, nothing to further add to the report. I just want to give a shout out to the Rice Bowl because as part of our bringing people in, we have meals at Diversity Kings, which is really nice. So last night we had Rice Bowl and it was delicious. So shout out to them.
And the IMSA with Valley Waste and King's Transit, I also have nothing to add to that. So now, do we have a motion to go in camera? Oh, we'll do public input. Is there anybody here for public input, and is there anybody online? All right. So we don't. So now could I have a motion to go in camera, please? So move Deputy Mayor and Seconder Councillor McKay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? No, we are now in camera. I don't know if everybody in the room can stay for in camera.